So, how many genders are there? Simple question. Should have a simple answer. Like, how many continents are there? Which, don't worry, we are not doing that one. That's a different kind of chaos. I asked a biologist. She said, well, it's complicated. I asked a psychologist. He said, it depends what you mean by gender. I asked my uncle at Thanksgiving. He said a number, very loudly, and then we had to talk about something else for the rest of dinner. So today, we're doing this properly. No shouting, just chromosomes, glands, some deeply weird animals, and one Indian Hijra community that's been at this longer than most modern nations have existed. Let's start at the bottom of the ladder, biology.
Okay, grade school version. 2 eggs walk into a chromosome bar. XX, you're statistically likely to develop ovaries. XY, testes. Done. Print a certificate, go home. Except biology looked at that tidy little chart and said, cute, and then filed it under suggestions. Because chromosomes don't always RSVP the way we expect. There's XXY, that's Klinefelter syndrome. Happens in roughly 1 in 500 to 1 in 1,000 male births. Extra chromosome, still shows up, brings a +1. There's X0, just one X, no second sex chromosome at all. That's Turner syndrome, around 1 in 2,000 to 2,500 female births. There's XYY, yes, that's a real one too. Guys just casually carrying a spare Y like it's a backup phone charger. And then there's mosaicism, where different cells in the same body have different chromosome patterns, because apparently your own body couldn't even agree with itself in the group chat. And that's before we even get to hormones deciding to freelance. Conditions like complete androgen insensitivity syndrome, where someone has XY chromosomes, but their body doesn't respond to androgens, so they develop with a typically female appearance. Their body got the memo and just declined to act on it. Put it all together, and biologists estimate that intersex traits, bodies that don't fit the standard XX female or XY male binary in some chromosomal, hormonal, or anatomical way, occur in somewhere around 1 in 100 people, depending on exactly which traits you count. That's roughly the same rate as being a redhead. Nobody's out here saying redheads aren't real. They're just a documented biological variation. So even before we touch the word gender, biological sex itself isn't a light switch. It's more like a dimmer switch that somebody wired badly.
Here's where a lot of dinner table arguments go sideways. People use sex and gender like they're the same word wearing a different hat. Scientists across biology, psychology, and anthropology generally treat them as related but distinct concepts. Sex is the biological stuff we just covered: chromosomes, gonads, hormones, anatomy. Gender is a term used across psychology and sociology to describe identity, roles, and social expression. The internal sense of, this is who I am, plus the roles a culture assigns to that. Why does this distinction exist? Because researchers noticed you can hold someone's chromosomes completely constant, and their sense of identity, their social role, even brain-related research findings don't always line up in one predictable pattern. It's an active, evolving area of research. Neuroscientists, psychologists, and endocrinologists are still mapping exactly how biology, development, and identity interact. Anyone who tells you this field is settled science in either direction is selling something.
So already, how many genders are there isn't one question. It's at least 3. How many biological sex categories exist? Complicated. See above. How many gender identities do people report? Also complicated. Depends on the survey. How many social gender roles has any given culture historically recognized? Which brings us to my favorite plot twist. Turns out, only 2 socially recognized genders is not some universal law of human civilization. It's more like a regional preference. Several very old cultures built entire recognized social categories beyond male and female, long before it was a cable news segment. In South Asia, Hijra communities have been documented for centuries, with recognition in ancient texts and, more recently, legal recognition as a 3rd gender in countries like India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. In parts of Mexico, particularly Zapotec communities in Oaxaca, Muxay individuals occupy a distinct socially recognized gender role. Many indigenous North American communities have long-standing traditions, now often grouped under the umbrella term Two-Spirit, encompassing a range of gender roles specific to individual nations and cultures. And in Samoa, fa'afafine represent another long-established gender category. Point being, the "there have only ever been two, everywhere, forever" argument is a historically shaky one. The "there's an infinite agreed-upon scientific number" argument is also shaky, because that's not really how any of these fields measure things either. The actual anthropological and scientific record shows that the number of recognized genders has varied by culture and by era, which is a very different, much less shoutable statement. Here's the honest, unsatisfying, scientifically responsible answer. There is no single number that biology, psychology, and sociology all agree on, because they're not all measuring the same thing. If you're asking about strict biological sex categories, you basically get two major reproductive strategies, categorized by gamete type, sperm or egg, with a meaningful percentage of humans showing intersex variation that doesn't cleanly sort into either bucket. If you're asking about gender identity as reported by individuals, that number depends entirely on the survey, the culture, and the year, and is a live, ongoing area of social science, not a fixed biological constant. If you're asking about socially recognized gender roles across human history, the honest count is more than two, in more places than you'd think, for longer than you'd think. So if someone gives you one confident number and acts like the debate is over, check whether they're talking about chromosomes, identity, or culture. Because right now, they're doing the scientific equivalent of answering how tall is a tree with one number for every tree on Earth. So back to my uncle at Thanksgiving. Turns out the actual scientific answer to how many genders are there is the most infuriating answer in all of science. Define your terms, then I'll get back to you. Biology gave us a beautifully messy dimmer switch instead of a light switch. Psychology and sociology are still actively mapping identity and social roles. And humanity's been running more than two categories in various corners of the globe since before we had the scientific method to argue about it properly. Which, honestly, kind of a relief. Turns out humans have never been simple. We just really, really want to be.